In the vast darkness between stars, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, there exists a species that the galaxy learned to fear too late. They called themselves humans, and they possessed something that no other race truly understood until it was far too late. A memory that burned like the cores of dying stars, and a capacity for vengeance that could reshape the very fabric of space itself. The Galactic Council thought they were dealing with primitive newcomers when humanity first knocked on their doors, hat in hand, seeking membership among the stars. What they didn't realize was that humanity had been watching, learning, and, most importantly, remembering every slight, every betrayal, every moment of condescension from their supposed betters. They say that humans are dangerous not because they're the strongest or the smartest, but because they never, ever forget a debt. And when that debt is paid in blood and betrayal, the interest compounds across generations until entire star systems tremble at the sound of human warships dropping out of hyperspace. This is the story of how the galaxy learned that some species don't just seek justice, they become it. And when humanity finally collected on what the universe owed them, the cosmos itself would bear witness to a fury so profound that it would literally tear stars from their foundations and hurl them across the void like weapons of divine wrath. The galaxy thought it knew what monsters looked like. They were wrong. Monsters, it turned out, looked exactly like the species they had dismissed as weak, forgettable, and expendable. Monsters looked human. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the observation deck of the human diplomatic vessel Aurora's Promise, watching the magnificent sight of Nexus Prime growing larger in the viewport. The capital world of the Galactic Council was a marvel of engineering, a planet-sized station that housed representatives from over 3,000 different species, all working together in what they called harmonious cooperation. The irony wasn't lost on her that humanity had been trying to join this cooperation for nearly 50 years, only to be met with bureaucratic delays, impossible requirements, and thinly veiled contempt. Beautiful, isn't it? Ambassador Marcus Webb joined her at the viewport, his weathered face reflecting the blue-white light of the station's fusion cores. Shame they built it on the bones of conquered worlds. Sarah turned to study the older man. Webb had been humanity's primary diplomat for 3 decades, and the job had aged him beyond his years. His gray hair had once been black as space, and his blue eyes held a weariness that came from too many negotiations with beings who saw humans as barely evolved primates. "Any word from the council?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from the diplomat's expression. "The same as always. Our application is being reviewed." The Zephyrian representative suggested we might be ready for consideration in another century or two, once we've proven our commitment to peaceful cooperation. Webb's voice carried barely contained frustration. This from a species that glassed 3 worlds in their expansion wars just 200 years ago. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as sleek alien vessels moved in perfect formation around the station. Crystalline Valdorian ships that could phase through solid matter. The biomechanical constructs of the Hive Collective that bred their technology rather than building it. The impossible geometries of Ashani vessels that seemed to fold space around themselves like origami. All of them belonged here. All of them were considered worthy. Humanity's ships, by comparison, looked brutish and primitive. Angular metal hulls bristling with kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles, crude by galactic standards but effective in ways the galaxy had yet to fully appreciate. The aliens saw weapons of war where humans saw tools of survival. They saw aggression where humans saw preparation. "Tell me about the Kepler incident again," Sarah said quietly. Webb's expression darkened. "You've read the files. I want to hear it from you." The ambassador was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped behind his back. "Kepler, 442b. Our first successful colony outside the Sol system. 2 million settlers, including families, children, scientists. They'd been there for 15 years, building something beautiful. The colonists had developed new agricultural techniques that could have fed billions across the galaxy." Sarah knew the story, but she also knew that Webb needed to tell it. The wound was still fresh after 20 years. The hegemony claimed the system was in their territory, despite the fact that their nearest outpost was 30 light-years away. They said humans were trespassing on sovereign hegemony space. Webb's voice grew quieter. "We appealed to the council, presented our case, showed them our settlement charter, our terraforming permits, all properly filed with the appropriate galactic authorities. And the Council ruled that the hegemony's claim took precedence due to their historical presence in the sector. Webb turned away from the viewport. The vote wasn't even close. 3,000 species, and exactly 12 voted in humanity's favor. The rest either voted against us or abstained. Sarah felt the familiar anger building in her chest. What happened to the colonists? The hegemony gave them 72 hours to evacuate. When our ships arrived to help with the evacuation, the hegemony fleet was already there. They said the colonists were resisting lawful eviction and opened fire. Webb's voice broke slightly. 2 million people, Sarah, gone in a matter of hours. And when we demanded justice, the Council said it was an unfortunate but legal enforcement action. The observation deck fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's fusion drive. Sarah watched the alien ships dance around Nexus Prime in their perfect formations, and she wondered how many of them had voted to condemn 2 million humans to death. "Why are we here?" she asked finally. "Why do we keep trying to join their club when they've made it clear they don't want us?" "Because someone needs to remember," Webb said softly. "Someone needs to make sure that what they did to Kepler, 442b, is recorded. Someone needs to be there when the debt comes due." "You think it will?" Webb smiled, but there was something cold in his expression. "Sarah, I've been studying galactic history for 40 years. Every civilization that has ever risen to power has done so by crushing those beneath them. The Council maintains peace through overwhelming force and the threat of collective retaliation. But they've made one critical mistake, which is they've assumed that humans are like them, that we'll eventually accept our place in the hierarchy and be grateful for whatever scraps they throw us. They don't understand that humans are different." Webb gestured toward the viewport, where Earth's sun was visible as a distant star. "We come from a world where the weak species either adapted or died, where cooperation was earned, not mandated, where memory was survival." Sarah frowned. "I don't understand. The predators on Earth hunted in packs. The prey animals formed herds. But humans? Humans were something else entirely. We were the persistence hunters. We didn't need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just needed to be patient, and we needed to remember." Webb's smile grew colder. "Every human child learns about Kepler, 442b in school. Every human knows the names of the Council members who voted against us. Every human remembers." The ship shuddered slightly as they entered Nexus Prime's docking protocols. Automated systems guided the Aurora's Promise toward a docking bay reserved for primitive species, a deliberate insult that wasn't lost on either of them. "What's our mission here, really?" Sarah asked. "Officially, another attempt to join the Council. Unofficially," Webb checked his chronometer, "we're here to make a withdrawal." "A withdrawal? From the bank of favors and debts that the galaxy has been building up for the last 50 years. You see, Sarah, they think they understand economics. They think they understand the value of trade routes and rare minerals and technological patents. But they don't understand the most valuable currency in the universe, which is information." Webb pulled out a datapad and handed it to her. "While they've been dismissing us as primitive warmongers, we've been watching, learning, recording every ship movement, every political alliance, every secret deal, every hidden weakness." Sarah scanned the datapad, her eyes widening. It contained detailed intelligence on dozens of Council species, military capabilities, political vulnerabilities, economic dependencies, even personal information about key leaders. Information that could topple governments or start wars. "How did we?" "Humans are very good at being underestimated," Webb said. "They see our crude technology and assume we're incompetent. They hear our simple language and assume we're stupid. They watch our emotional reactions and assume we're unstable. What they don't realize is that emotional investment creates focus. Pain creates motivation. And memory creates opportunity." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud, and Sarah felt the familiar sensation of transitioning from ship gravity to station gravity. Around them, the ship's crew began preparing for diplomatic protocols, formal uniforms, translation devices, ceremonial weapons that would be surrendered at the station's security checkpoint. "Are we really here to join the Council?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression was unreadable. "We're here to collect what's owed to us. Whether that means joining their club or burning it down depends entirely on how they choose to pay their debts." A comm system crackled to life. "Ambassador Webb, This is Nexus Prime Control. You are cleared for diplomatic entry through Base 7. Please be advised that all weapons must be declared and surrendered upon entry, in accordance with Council Regulation 847B. Webb activated the comm system. Nexus Prime Control, this is Ambassador Webb. We understand the regulations and will comply fully. Copy that, Ambassador. Welcome to Nexus Prime. As the comm system clicked off, Webb turned back to Sarah. Remember, Captain, humans are the only species that wages war for philosophical reasons. Every other race fights for territory, resources, or survival. But humans? We fight for ideas, for principles, for the memory of those who can no longer fight for themselves. Sarah nodded, her hand instinctively moving to the memorial patch on her uniform, a small piece of cloth from Kepler 442b that every human diplomat wore. 2 million people. 2 million people, Webb agreed. And today the galaxy finally pays interest on their deaths. As they prepared to disembark, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't here as supplicants anymore. They were here as collectors, and the debt was about to come due. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere, revealing the magnificent interior of Nexus Prime. Alien beings moved in graceful patterns through corridors that stretched beyond sight, their forms beautiful and strange and utterly confident in their superiority. Sarah smiled as she followed Webb into the station. None of them knew that humans had been planning this moment for 20 years. None of them understood that every slight, every dismissal, every death had been carefully cataloged and filed away in the human memory banks. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you owed humanity a debt. And humanity never, ever forgot to collect. The council chamber was a marvel of architecture and arrogance. Suspended in zero gravity at the heart of Nexus Prime, the spherical chamber housed 3,000 floating platforms, each one carefully positioned to represent the relative power and influence of its occupying species. At the center, a massive holographic display showed real-time data from across the galaxy, trade routes, military movements, diplomatic communications. Sarah found herself wondering how many human deaths were hidden in those cheerfully blinking data points. Ambassador Webb moved with practiced ease through the chamber's diplomatic protocols, his formal robes masking the advanced recording equipment woven into the fabric. Every conversation, every gesture, every sneer of contempt was being captured and transmitted back to human intelligence networks. Ambassador Webb, a melodious voice called out, and Sarah turned to see High Counselor Velterra gliding toward them. The Zephyrian was beautiful in the way that all her species were tall, willowy, with opalescent skin that shifted colors with her emotions. Currently, those colors indicated polite condescension. How wonderful to see humanity attempting diplomacy once again. Webb bowed in the traditional Zephyrian manner, his movements perfectly measured. High Counselor, thank you for receiving us. I trust the Council has had time to review our latest application for membership. Velterra's skin shifted to a pale yellow, the Zephyrian equivalent of a patronizing smile. Oh yes, we reviewed it thoroughly. Quite thoroughly indeed. And I'm afraid the consensus remains the same. Humanity simply isn't ready for the responsibilities of Council membership. May I ask what specific criteria we've failed to meet? Webb's voice remained perfectly diplomatic, but Sarah caught the slight tension in his shoulders. Well, there's the matter of your species' violent tendencies, for one. The Council requires members to demonstrate a commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts. Velterra gestured gracefully toward the holographic display. According to our records, human space currently hosts 17 active military conflicts. Sarah stepped forward. Those are defensive actions against pirate raids and territorial incursions. The Council's own security briefings confirm that humans have never initiated aggressive action against a galactic neighbor. Velterra's skin flickered with brief orange amusement. Defensive, yes, but so enthusiastic in your methods. The Ricari Syndicate learned that lesson quite harshly. Webb's expression didn't change. The Ricari Syndicate made the mistake of attacking human shipping convoys and enslaving our merchant crews. When they refused to return our people through diplomatic channels, we responded appropriately by destroying their entire fleet and crippling their homeworld's defense grid. Velterra's colors shifted to cool blue, the Zephyrian expression of mock concern. Rather disproportionate, don't you think? We gave them every opportunity to return our people safely, Webb replied. When they chose to torture and sell human beings in slave markets, they discovered that actions have consequences. Sarah felt a familiar surge of pride. The Ricari incident had been one of humanity's finest moments, a surgical strike that freed thousands of enslaved humans while crippling one of the galaxy's most notorious pirate organizations. The fact that the Council viewed it as excessive force rather than justified rescue operation spoke volumes about their priorities. There's also the matter of your technological development. Velterra continued smoothly. The Council requires members to contribute something unique to galactic civilization. What exactly do humans offer that we cannot find elsewhere? Webb smiled, and Sarah recognized the expression. It was the same smile he'd worn when discussing the debt that was coming due. I'm glad you asked, High Counselor. Humanity has developed several technologies that might interest the Council. Oh, such as? Well, there's our gravitational manipulation technology. We've learned to artificially generate gravity wells that can disrupt hyperspace travel. Webb pulled out a small device that looked like a simple metal sphere. This prototype can generate a field that makes hyperspace jumps impossible within a light-year radius. Velterra's skin shifted to sharp violet, surprise, and interest. That's quite impossible. Gravitational manipulation on that scale requires massive energy inputs. Human engineering tends to find elegant solutions to complex problems, Webb said mildly. We've also developed improved shield harmonics that can deflect energy weapons with 97% efficiency, and our kinetic weaponry has achieved remarkable penetration capabilities against most known defensive systems. Sarah watched as other council members began to take notice of their conversation. Weapons technology was always interesting to galactic powers, no matter how much they pretended to value peace. Of course, Webb continued, we've been reluctant to share these innovations with a broader galactic community. They represent significant strategic advantages, and we've learned to be cautious about sharing our capabilities with those who might use them against us. Are you suggesting that council members would misuse human technology? Velterra's skin flickered with indignant red. Not at all. I'm simply noting that trust is earned through mutual respect and cooperation, something that has been in short supply where humanity is concerned. Webb's smile never wavered. For instance, the Kepler incident. The chamber around them grew noticeably quieter. Several alien diplomats moved closer, their various sensory organs focused on the conversation. The Kepler incident was a regrettable necessity, Velterra said carefully. The hegemony's territorial claims were legally valid under galactic law. Were they? Webb tilted his head slightly. Because our intelligence suggests that the hegemony's historical claims to that sector were fabricated. Velterra's skin went completely white, the Zephyrian expression of shock. That's quite an accusation, Ambassador. It's quite well documented, actually. Webb produced another device, this one projecting a holographic display of star charts and legal documents. We spent the last 20 years investigating the hegemony's territorial claims. Fascinating research, really. The holographic display showed a complex web of falsified documents, bribed officials, and manufactured evidence. Sarah watched as the truth of the Kepler incident unfolded in glowing detail. How the hegemony had systematically corrupted the Council's territorial database. How they had eliminated witness testimony. How they had orchestrated the entire crisis to seize valuable human terraforming technology. Where did you obtain this information? Velterra's voice had lost its melodious quality. Humans are quite persistent when we set our minds to something, Webb replied. We've been conducting a comprehensive audit of galactic territorial claims for the past 2 decades. Amazing what you can learn when everyone assumes you're too primitive to understand complex galactic politics. More council members were gathering now, their attention focused entirely on Webb's presentation. Sarah could see fear beginning to appear in various alien expressions as they realized the implications of what they were seeing. You see, High Counselor, the hegemony wasn't the only species to file fraudulent territorial claims. Webb expanded the holographic display. We've identified systematic corruption involving 47 different council members. Illegal territory seizures, falsified historical claims, bribed judicial officials, eliminated witness testimony. The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos as various species began recognizing their own dirty laundry being aired in public. Sarah watched with grim satisfaction as decades of hidden corruption was laid bare for all to see. How much of this is true? Demanded Overlord Crix of the hegemony, his cybernetic voice cutting through the noise. All of it, Webb replied calmly. Every document, every transaction, every communication. Humans are very thorough when it comes to record keeping. And what exactly do you intend to do with this information? Velterra's skin had settled into a sickly gray, the color of dread. Webb's smile grew slightly wider. Well, that depends entirely on the Council's response to our membership application. You're blackmailing the Galactic Council? The accusation came from Ambassador Zektai of the Ashanti Concordat, his crystalline form resonating with harmonic outrage. Not at all, Webb replied. I'm simply pointing out that the galaxy's political structure appears to be built on systematic fraud and corruption. As responsible galactic citizens, humans feel obligated to ensure that justice is served. Justice? Overlord Crix's mechanical voice carried clear menace. What would humanity know about galactic justice? Webb's expression grew cold. We know that 2 million innocent people died because of fabricated territorial claims. We know that their deaths were ruled legal by a council that knew the claims were false. We know that justice delayed is justice denied. Sarah felt the shift in the chamber's atmosphere. The casual dismissal and condescension had been replaced by something much more dangerous: fear and anger. The galactic powers were beginning to realize that humanity wasn't here to beg for membership anymore. However, Webb continued, his voice returning to diplomatic tones, humans are reasonable beings. We understand that complex political structures sometimes develop irregularities over time. We're prepared to work with the Council to address these issues constructively. In exchange for Council membership, Velterra stated flatly. Among other things, yes. Webb gestured toward the holographic display. We have comprehensive evidence of criminal activity involving 47 Council species. This information could be quite damaging if it were to be released publicly. Fortunately, humans prefer negotiation to confrontation. And if the Council refuses your demands? Overlord Crix asked. Webb's smile returned. Then, humanity will be forced to seek justice through alternative channels. We've already transmitted copies of this evidence to independent media networks, neutral governments, and various revolutionary organizations throughout the galaxy. Should anything happen to the human delegation, or should our reasonable requests continue to be denied, this information will be released automatically. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Sarah watched as 3,000 different species processed the implications of humanity's ultimatum. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was being held accountable for its actions. This is extortion, Zektai declared. This is justice, Webb corrected. The galaxy has owed humanity a debt for 20 years. Today, we've simply presented the bill. Velterra's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a deep purple, resignation mixed with calculation. What exactly are your terms, Ambassador? Webb gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a formal document. Immediate Council membership for humanity, with full voting rights and security guarantees. Formal acknowledgement of the illegal nature of the Kepler incident. Reparations for the families of the deceased colonists. And a comprehensive review of all territorial claims filed in the last century. Impossible, Overlord Crix stated flatly. The Council does not negotiate under duress. Then, perhaps the Council should have considered that before murdering 2 million humans, Sarah said quietly, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber. Her words carried across the chamber with devastating clarity. Every alien present suddenly remembered that humans weren't just political problems to be managed. They were people who had watched their friends and family die because of galactic politics. You have 48 hours to consider our proposal, Webb announced, closing down the holographic display. After that, we'll assume the Council prefers to handle this matter in the court of public opinion. As they turned to leave, Velterra called after them. Ambassador Webb, how long have you been planning this? Webb paused at the chamber's exit. Since the day we learned our people were dead, High Counselor, humans never forget a debt, and we always collect the interest. As they exited the Council chamber, Sarah felt a mix of exhilaration and nervousness. Do you think they'll agree? Some will, Webb replied. Others won't. But That's not really the point anymore. What do you mean? Webb smiled as they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, past aliens who were no longer looking at them with condescension, but with barely concealed fear. The point is that the galaxy now knows humanity remembers everything. Every slight, every betrayal, every death. And we're patient enough to wait decades for the perfect moment to collect. Sarah thought about the gravitational manipulation device Webb had demonstrated and suddenly understood. That wasn't really a prototype, was it? Oh no, Webb confirmed. That was fully operational. Just like the 300 others we positioned around major galactic trade routes last month. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. We could shut down galactic commerce entirely. Among other things, yes. Funny how quickly people take you seriously when they realize you could cripple their entire civilization with a push of a button. Webb's expression grew thoughtful. The galaxy taught us a valuable lesson 20 years ago, that power is the only currency that matters. So we decided to become very, very wealthy. As they walked back toward their ship, Sarah realized that this wasn't just about joining the council anymore. This was about fundamentally reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. And humanity had just announced that the age of galactic civilization as they knew it was over. The debt was finally coming due, and the interest was going to be astronomical. The emergency council session convened just 18 hours after Webb's ultimatum, a record response time that spoke volumes about the panic spreading through galactic leadership. Sarah watched from the human delegation's observation platform as 3,000 species argued, threatened, and pleaded with each other in a cacophony of languages, harmonics, and pheromone releases that the station's translation systems could barely keep up with. They're scared, Webb observed with satisfaction, monitoring the proceedings through a series of discrete surveillance devices that human intelligence had placed throughout the station over the years. Good. Fear makes people honest. Sarah studied the various alien factions forming and dissolving in real-time political calculations. The hegemony is trying to build a war coalition. Of course they are. Overlord Crix knows that if our evidence goes public, his entire power structure collapses. He's got maybe 48 hours before revolution breaks out on a dozen hegemony worlds. Webb adjusted his earpiece to listen in on encrypted communications. The interesting question is who will follow him. On the main floor, Velterra was attempting to maintain order while various species hurled accusations at each other. The carefully maintained facade of galactic unity was cracking under the weight of revealed corruption, and Sarah could see the fracture lines spreading. The Ashanti Concordat is wavering, Sarah noted, watching Ambassador Zektai's crystalline form shift through nervous harmonic patterns. Their territorial claims weren't as fabricated as some of the others, but they voted to approve the fraudulent ones, Webb replied. Complicity carries its own price in the court of public opinion. A new voice cut through the chaos. Admiral Vexhari of the Valdorian Empire, her species' natural telepathic abilities allowing her to project calm directly into the minds of nearby delegates. Perhaps we should focus on the real issue here. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that were previously unknown to galactic intelligence services. This represents a significant shift in the balance of power. Sarah felt Webb tense beside her. The Valdorians were known for their strategic thinking and military prowess. If they were focusing on humanity's technological capabilities rather than the blackmail implications, it meant they were already thinking about longer-term consequences. Our intelligence suggests that human technological development has been deliberately concealed, Admiral Vexhari continued. The gravitational manipulation devices are just the beginning. Our analysts believe humanity may possess military capabilities far exceeding their public demonstrations. You're suggesting they pose a threat to galactic security? Overlord Crix's voice carried mechanical hope. If he could frame humanity as a military threat rather than victims seeking justice, he might be able to rally support for a preemptive strike. I'm suggesting that we may have systematically underestimated a species that has been carefully preparing for this moment for 2 decades. Admiral Vexhari's telepathic projections carried undertones of grudging respect. The question is, what do they really want? Webb smiled and activated a communication device. Why don't you ask them directly? The chamber fell silent as Webb's voice echoed through the council's communication systems. Sarah realized he had somehow hacked into their closed session, another demonstration of humanity's hidden capabilities. Greetings, esteemed council members, Webb said pleasantly. I hope we're not interrupting anything important. This session is closed to non-members, Velterra protested, her skin cycling through rapid color changes that indicated severe distress. Yes, we noticed. Quite rude, really, to hold emergency sessions about humanity's ultimatum without inviting human representatives. But then, the Council has never been particularly concerned with human perspectives on galactic politics. Sarah watched as security personnel scrambled to locate and shut down Webb's transmission, only to discover that the signal was being routed through the station's own communication grid in ways that made interruption impossible without shutting down all Council communications. "What do you want?" Admiral Vexhari asked directly, her telepathic abilities apparently allowing her to sense something in Webb's tone that others missed. "What we've always wanted, justice for our dead, and recognition as equals in galactic civilization." Webb's voice grew colder. "What we're prepared to take, if necessary, is everything." Everything. Overlord Crix's mechanical voice carried clear threat. "The galaxy runs on systems, Overlord. Trade routes, communication networks, resource distribution, military logistics. Disrupt those systems and civilization collapses." Webb paused for effect. "Humans have spent 20 years studying those systems. We know where every choke point is, every critical node, every single point of failure." The holographic display at the center of the council chamber suddenly activated without authorization, showing a real-time map of galactic commerce. Hundreds of trade routes appeared as glowing lines connecting thousands of worlds in a complex web of economic interdependence. For instance, Webb continued, 37% of galactic commerce flows through the Nexus Junction hyperspace relay. Disable that single facility, and 17 major trade routes become economically unviable overnight. Red indicators appeared at key points throughout the map. Hyperspace relays, fuel depots, communication hubs, manufacturing centers. Sarah realized she was looking at a target list that could bring galactic civilization to its knees. "The beautiful thing about complex systems is their fragility," Webb observed. "Remove the right components, and everything falls apart. And humans have become very good at identifying the right components. You're threatening to destroy galactic civilization over a territorial dispute." Zektai's crystalline form resonated with harmonic disbelief. "We're pointing out that galactic civilization destroyed itself the day it decided that human lives were expendable for political convenience." Webb's voice grew harsh. 2 million people died because the Council chose expediency over justice. How many more have died in similar incidents that nobody bothered to investigate? How many species have been ground under the wheels of Council politics while you congratulated yourselves on maintaining peace? Sarah felt a chill as she realized the scope of what Webb was really saying. This wasn't just about Kepler 442b. This was about a fundamental challenge to the entire galactic order. "The current system works," Admiral Vexhari stated firmly. "For who?" Webb demanded. "For the 47 species we've documented engaging in systematic fraud? For the weapons manufacturers who profit from eternal border conflicts? For the slave traders operating under Council protection? The system works perfectly if you're powerful enough to exploit it." The chamber erupted again as various species began accusing each other of the crimes Webb had referenced. Sarah watched with fascination as decades of hidden resentments boiled to the surface. "But we're reasonable beings," Webb continued once the noise died down. "We don't want to destroy galactic civilization. We want to fix it. And that starts with acknowledging what happened to our people and holding the responsible parties accountable." "The Council doesn't negotiate under threat of force," Velterra declared, her skin now solid black, the Zephyrian expression of absolute refusal. "Then perhaps it's time for a new council," Webb replied pleasantly. The holographic display shifted to show detailed intelligence profiles of key leaders throughout the galaxy. Not just council members, but planetary governors, military commanders, corporate executives, even religious leaders. Every profile included comprehensive information about their political positions, personal weaknesses, family relationships, and financial interests. "We've been quite busy over the last 2 decades," Webb explained. "While you were dismissing us as primitive warmongers, we were building the most comprehensive intelligence network in galactic history. We know who takes bribes, who has secret lovers, who's embezzling public funds, who's planning coups, who's developing illegal weapons, who's funding terrorist organizations. Sarah felt the chamber's atmosphere shift from anger to genuine fear as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just gathered evidence of past crimes. They had assembled the tools to manipulate galactic politics at every level. Information is power, Webb continued, and power shared judiciously can accomplish remarkable things. For instance, we recently shared some interesting financial records with reform movements on 12 different worlds. Amazing how quickly corrupt governments fall when their people learn where the money really goes. Revolution, Admiral Vexhari said quietly. You're not just threatening the Council. You're threatening the entire galactic power structure. We're offering to help build a better one. A system based on actual justice rather than convenient fictions. A galaxy where small species don't get murdered for political expedience. Webb's voice grew gentler. But that requires the current leadership to acknowledge their failures and commit to genuine reform. Overlord Crix's mechanical voice cut through the discussion. And if we refuse, then you'll discover what happens when a species with nothing left to lose decides that the entire galaxy needs to be held accountable for its crimes. Webb paused. We've run the calculations, Overlord. Galactic civilization can survive the loss of 47 corrupt governments and their enabling infrastructure. The question is whether you can. Sarah realized that Webb wasn't bluffing. Humanity really was prepared to tear down the entire galactic order, if necessary. The gravitational manipulation devices, the intelligence networks, the evidence of corruption, it was all part of a comprehensive plan to either reform galactic civilization or replace it entirely. 48 hours, Webb reminded them. After that, the choice is no longer yours. The transmission cut off, leaving 3,000 species to contemplate the fact that a primitive human species had just held a knife to the throat of galactic civilization and asked politely for justice. Sarah turned to Webb as they prepared to leave their observation post. Are we really prepared to follow through on all of that? Webb's expression was grim. Sarah, humanity spent 50 years trying to join galactic civilization peacefully. We offered friendship, cooperation, trade, technological exchange, cultural enrichment. We were patient, diplomatic, understanding. And they murdered 2 million of our people for their convenience. Webb's eyes grew cold. So yes, we're prepared to follow through. Because sometimes the only way to save civilization is to threaten to destroy it. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Sarah noticed that the alien beings they passed no longer looked at them with condescension. Now they looked at humanity with fear, respect, and calculation. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and everyone knew it. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now we find out who really believes in justice, and who just pays lip service to it for political convenience, Webb replied. And then we discover whether galactic civilization is worth saving or if we need to build something better from scratch. Sarah thought about the 2 million colonists on Kepler, 442b, who had died believing that justice and law meant something in the galaxy. Now, 20 years later, humanity was finally in a position to find out if they were right. The debt was coming due, and the interest had compounded beyond anyone's ability to calculate. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you owed humanity more than you could pay. And Sarah had a feeling that the final accounting was going to reshape the stars themselves. The first star died exactly 49 hours after Webb's ultimatum expired. Sarah watched from the bridge of the Aurora's Promise as the hegemony's primary shipyard star, a red giant that had anchored their military-industrial complex for 3 centuries, simply vanished from existence. One moment it was there, a burning orb of nuclear fury that powered 17 worlds and countless orbital installations. The next moment, there was only empty space and the rapidly cooling debris of civilization that had chosen defiance over justice. Admiral Vexhari's transmission crackled through the communication systems of every ship in the sector. The Valdorian fleet had been positioned to protect the shipyard system, but they had been powerless to prevent what had just occurred. Webb's response was calm, almost conversational. Stellar engineering, Admiral. When you can manipulate gravity wells, you can manipulate stellar formation. When you can manipulate stellar formation, you can control stellar collapse. When you can control stellar collapse. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Every being watching had just witnessed humanity reach into the heart of a star and extinguish it like snuffing out a candle. The hegemony chose to mobilize their fleet against human civilian targets rather than engage in meaningful negotiations. Webb continued, his voice echoing across every communication channel in the galaxy. Overlord Crix declared that humanity would learn its place in the galactic order. Well, Overlord, consider this our response to your educational efforts. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. She understood the strategic necessity. The hegemony fleet had been moving to attack human colonies in retaliation for the ultimatum. But the scale of destruction was beyond anything she had imagined possible. 17 billion beings, Admiral Vexhari whispered over the open channel. You've murdered 17 billion innocent beings. We evacuated the system 43 hours ago, Webb replied calmly. Every single being who wanted to leave was transported to safety aboard human vessels. The only casualties were Overlord Crix and his senior command staff, who chose to remain behind to coordinate their attack on human targets. Sarah's console chimed with incoming data, and she realized that Webb was telling the truth. Massive human evacuation fleets had been operating throughout the system for days, offering free transport to anyone willing to leave. Most had taken the offer when they learned what humanity was capable of doing. Your monsters, came another transmission, this one from High Counselor Volterra aboard the Council's emergency response fleet. No, Webb corrected, his voice growing cold. Monsters murder 2 million innocent colonists and call it legal. We gave everyone a choice. We warned them exactly what would happen. We provided free evacuation for anyone who wanted to live. The only beings who died were those who chose war over justice. Sarah watched her tactical display as humanity's true capabilities became visible for the first time. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace throughout the galaxy. Not the crude, angular vessels that everyone expected, but sleek, advanced warships that incorporated technologies no one had seen before. My God, Admiral Vexhari breathed. How many ships do you have? Enough, Webb replied simply. The tactical display told a different story. Sarah counted over 10,000 human vessels appearing across dozens of star systems, each one equipped with gravitational manipulation technology that made them effectively immune to conventional weapons. But more terrifying was what they were doing, not attacking military targets, but positioning themselves around strategic infrastructure throughout the galaxy. You're targeting the hyperspace relay network, Admiral Vexhari observed. We're protecting it, Webb corrected, from anyone who might be tempted to use it for military purposes while we resolve this situation peacefully. Sarah understood the implications immediately. With human ships controlling the major hyperspace relays, galactic commerce and communication could continue, but only with humanity's permission. The economic lifelines of galactic civilization were now completely under human control. This is economic warfare, protested Ambassador Zektai from his position near the Nexus Prime relay. This is justice, Webb replied. For 20 years, the galaxy has used economic and legal warfare against humanity. Today, you discover what happens when the victims of that warfare develop the capability to respond in kind. Another chime from Sarah's console indicated massive data releases beginning throughout galactic communication networks. The evidence Webb had shown the Council was now being broadcast publicly. Detailed documentation of corruption, fraud, and systematic oppression spanning centuries of galactic history. You're destroying everything. Volterra's transmission carried despair. Governments are falling. Military units are deserting. Trade cartels are collapsing. We're cleaning house, Webb corrected. Revolution isn't destruction, it's renewal. The corruption we've documented was already destroying galactic civilization from within. We're simply accelerating the process and ensuring that what replaces it is better. Sarah watched reports streaming in from across the galaxy. On 47 different worlds, populations were rising against governments they had just learned were thoroughly corrupt. Military forces were choosing sides based on conscience rather than orders. Corporate hierarchies were collapsing as their financial crimes became public knowledge. But it's working, Sarah said quietly, studying the patterns emerging from the chaos. Webb nodded. The galaxy's immune system is finally kicking in. For centuries, corruption and injustice have been protected by secrecy and complexity. Remove those protections and natural social processes take over. A new transmission cut through the chaos. This one from Fleet Commander Torvel of the Free World Alliance, one of the few remaining clean governments in the galaxy. Ambassador Webb, the Free Worlds formally recognize humanity's legitimate grievances and request negotiations for a new galactic compact based on genuine justice and equality. Accepted, Webb replied immediately. All human forces will provide protection and assistance to Free World's territories during the transition period. Sarah watched as the pattern spread. Clean governments were allying with humanity for protection during the chaos. Corrupt governments were either falling to their own people or trying desperately to reform before revolution consumed them. Military forces were choosing honor over orders. "This is what you planned all along," Admiral Vexhari said, her telepathic abilities apparently allowing her to sense the underlying strategy. Not destruction, but transformation. "Humans are builders, Admiral. We don't destroy unless we're building something better in its place." Webb's voice carried tired satisfaction. "But sometimes you have to tear down a rotten structure before you can build a proper foundation." Another star system appeared on Sarah's tactical display. This one in Zephyrian space, where High Counselor Valterra had apparently ordered attacks on human evacuation fleets. The star remained intact, but every military installation in the system had simply vanished. Not destroyed, but transported elsewhere through gravitational manipulation that defied known physics. "Where did you take them?" Valterra demanded. "Somewhere safe, where they can think about their choices without threatening innocent civilians," Webb replied. "Your military will be returned unharmed once you demonstrate a genuine commitment to justice and reform." Sarah realized that humanity was fighting the most bloodless war in galactic history. Rather than destroying their enemies, they were simply removing their ability to cause harm while offering them chances to reform. "How is this possible?" Admiral Vexhari asked. "Our intelligence indicated that human technology was centuries behind galactic standards." Webb's chuckle carried dark amusement. "Admiral, human technology was never behind galactic standards. We simply learned not to advertise our capabilities after what happened at Kepler 442b. New data cascaded across Sarah's display. Technical specifications that revealed the true scope of human advancement. Faster-than-light communication systems that operated without hyperspace relays. Manufacturing techniques that could produce complex technology at the molecular level. Energy generation methods that extracted power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations. "You've been lying about everything," Valterra accused. "We've been protecting ourselves," Webb corrected. "When a species demonstrates that they'll murder millions of people over territory disputes, you don't advertise your strategic capabilities. You wait until you're strong enough to ensure that justice can be served." Sarah thought about the colonists on Kepler 442b and suddenly understood the true scope of humanity's response. Those 2 million people hadn't died in vain. Their deaths had motivated a species-wide commitment to ensuring that such injustices could never happen again. "What happens now?" Fleet Commander Torvel asked. "Now we build something better," Webb replied. "A galactic government based on actual democracy rather than power politics. Economic systems that serve all species rather than just the wealthy ones. Legal frameworks that protect the innocent rather than enabling the corrupt. And if we refuse..." Overlord Crix's successor asked from the remnants of the hegemony fleet. Webb's response was simple and terrifying. "Then you'll discover what happens when you owe humanity a debt that can only be paid in stars." Sarah watched as another hegemony system appeared on her display. This one showing signs of imminent stellar collapse as human gravitational manipulators began their work. "We surrender," the hegemony commander transmitted quickly. "We formally surrender and request terms for peaceful transition to the new galactic order." "Accepted," Webb replied immediately, and the stellar collapse indicators disappeared. "All hegemony forces will stand down and cooperate with transitional authorities. Reparations for Kepler 442b will be discussed during formal peace negotiations." Across the galaxy, similar surrenders began flooding communication channels as species realized that humanity was offering genuine alternatives to destruction. The corrupt were given chances to reform. The oppressed were offered protection and support. The innocent were guaranteed safety regardless of their government's choices. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Vexhari observed. A complete transformation of galactic civilization in less than 72 hours. This is what happens when justice delayed finally becomes justice delivered, Webb replied. The galaxy has been accumulating debt to its victims for centuries. Today, we're simply ensuring that the interest gets paid. Sarah felt a strange sense of completion as she watched the old galactic order collapse, and something new began to emerge from the ruins. Humanity had kept faith with their dead, and the galaxy would never again be able to dismiss the value of human life. The stars themselves had become weapons in service of justice, and the universe would remember that some debts could only be paid in light itself. Webb had been right. Humanity never forgot a debt, and the interest had indeed become astronomical. 5 years after the stellar reckoning, as historians would later call it, Sarah Chin stood in the Memorial Hall of New Kepler, watching children from a dozen different species playing together in the memorial gardens. The new colony world had been built as a testament to the 2 million humans who had died here 25 years ago, but it had become something more, a symbol of the galactic transformation that their deaths had ultimately made possible. "It's beautiful," Admiral Vexhari said quietly, joining Sarah at the observation window. The Valdorian's telepathic abilities had made her an ideal choice for the new Galactic Justice Council, where understanding the true intentions of speakers was crucial for fair adjudication. "They would have loved this," Sarah replied, thinking of the original colonists. All they wanted was a chance to build something good. The Memorial Gardens told the story not just of Kepler 442b, but of the broader transformation that had followed humanity's collection of its debt. Where the old galactic order had been built on hierarchy and exploitation, the new galactic cooperative emphasized equality, transparency, and genuine democratic participation. "Ambassador Webb is waiting for you in the council chambers," Admiral Vexhari said gently. "The final ratification ceremony is about to begin." Sarah nodded and made her way through the memorial complex toward the new Galactic Council building. Unlike the ostentatious display of Nexus Prime, this structure was designed for function rather than intimidation. Transparent walls, open meeting spaces, and recording systems that ensured every decision was made in full public view. The transformation hadn't been easy. 17 species had chosen exile rather than reform, departing for distant galaxies where they could maintain their old ways of governance. 23 others had undergone revolutionary changes as their populations overthrew corrupt leadership and established new governments based on the cooperative model. But the majority had chosen adaptation and renewal. The Zephyrians, led by High Counselor Valterra's successor, had embraced radical transparency in their governance. The Free World Alliance had expanded to include 47 former council species. Even the remnants of the hegemony had established a democratic federation that was working to make reparations for decades of aggressive expansion. "Captain Chun," Webb greeted her as she entered the council chambers. The years had been kind to him. The stress lines had eased, and his eyes held satisfaction rather than the cold anger she remembered from their confrontation with the old council. "Ambassador," she replied formally, then grinned. "Though I suppose it's Director Webb now." Webb smiled back. As the first Director General of the Galactic Cooperative, he had overseen the peaceful transition from the old order to the new. It had been delicate work, requiring a careful balance between justice and reconciliation, but the results spoke for themselves. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, gesturing toward the assembled representative from 317 species, every remaining government that had chosen to join the cooperative. "I never thought I'd live to see the day," Sarah admitted. 25 years ago, we were just trying to get someone to acknowledge that our people mattered. And now their deaths have reshaped galactic civilization, Webb observed. "Sometimes the most important victories are won by those who don't live to see them." The ceremony itself was simple by design. No ostentatious displays of power, no hierarchical seating arrangements, no coded language designed to obscure meaning. Each species representative stood as equals and formally ratified the Galactic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, a document that enshrined the principles humanity had fought for. Every sentient being has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Fleet Commander Torvel read from the Charter. No government may deny these rights based on species, technology level, or political convenience. Justice delayed is justice denied. Power exists to serve the people, not the other way around. Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks as the words echoed through the chamber. These were the principles the Kepler colonists had believed in. These were the ideals they had died for, unknowingly, when they refused to abandon their new home. I declare the Galactic Cooperative formally established, Webb announced as the final votes were recorded. May it serve justice and protect the innocent for 1,000 generations. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not the forced pageantry of the old council, but genuine joy from beings who had finally found a system of government they could believe in. "What's next for you?" Admiral Vexhari asked Sarah as they watched the festivities. "I'm returning to Earth," Sarah said. "The Stellar Engineering Corps wants to establish a new academy, and they've asked me to help design the curriculum. Teaching people to move stars," Vexhari mused. "That would have been inconceivable 5 years ago." "A lot of things would have been inconceivable 5 years ago," Sarah replied. "Democratic governance spanning multiple galaxies, universal education and healthcare, the complete elimination of slavery and indentured servitude, economic systems designed for sustainability rather than exploitation, the power of human memory and human stubbornness," Vexhari observed with telepathic amusement. "Other species forget injustices and move on. Humans remember them and use them as motivation to build something better." Sarah thought about that as she prepared to leave New Kepler. Human persistence had indeed been the key, not just the ability to remember wrongs, but the determination to ensure they could never be repeated. The stellar engineering technology that had ended the war was now being used for peaceful purposes. Dead stars were being reborn to provide energy for developing civilizations. Gravitational manipulation was being used to create stable planetary orbits for species seeking new homes. The weapons that had threatened galactic civilization were becoming tools for its renewal. "There's something else," Webb said quietly as Sarah prepared to board her transport. "Something I never told you about the real reason we developed the stellar manipulation technology." "Oh, it wasn't originally designed as a weapon. We developed it to resurrect Kepler's star." Webb's expression grew distant. "We thought that maybe, somehow, we could bring back what we'd lost. Give those colonists a proper memorial by restoring their home system." Sarah felt her heart clench. "Did it work?" "Partially. We managed to reignite the star, but—" Webb shook his head. "You can't truly resurrect the dead, only honor their memory by protecting the living. So we built something better instead. We built something worthy of their sacrifice," Webb agreed. "A galaxy where what happened to them can never happen again." Sarah boarded her transport thinking about cycles of debt and payment, memory, and justice. The galaxy had owed humanity a debt it could never truly repay. How do you resurrect 2 million innocent people? But by forcing the galaxy to confront its failures and build something better, humanity had transformed that debt into something positive. As her ship departed New Kepler, Sarah watched the memorial gardens shrinking in the viewport until they were just points of light against the planet's surface. But she knew that light would endure. Every school in the Galactic Cooperative taught the story of Kepler 442b. Every government official swore an oath to remember the colonists' sacrifice. Every species in the galaxy had learned that some debts transcend death and demand payment in the form of justice. The old galactic order had thought it could murder 2 million humans and face no consequences. They had been wrong. They had awakened something in humanity that had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their patient watch over the galaxy's trade routes and communication networks, not as conquerors or oppressors, but as guardians ensuring that the hard-won peace endured. The technology that could tear stars from their moorings now protected the light of civilization itself. Sarah smiled as Earth's sun grew larger in her viewport. Humanity had finally come home, not just to their birth world, but to their proper place as equals in a galaxy that had learned to value justice over convenience. The debt had been paid in full, with interest that had literally moved stars. And the universe itself was better for it. Webb had been right all those years ago. Humans never forgot a debt. But what the galaxy had finally learned was that the interest on justice, properly applied, could build wonders that lasted for generations. The colonists of Kepler 442b were dead, but their legacy burned bright in every corner of the galaxy. And that light would never, ever be extinguished again. Justice delayed had finally become justice delivered, and the stars themselves bore witness to the transformation. In a universe where power had once flowed from the barrel of a gun, humanity had proven that the greatest power of all flowed from the simple, persistent demand that all sentient life be treated with dignity. The galaxy had owed humanity a debt it thought it would never have to pay. But the universe has a way of collecting what it's owed, and the interest on injustice had indeed proven to be astronomical. Now, finally, the books were balanced, and the stars sang songs of justice across the cosmic void.